My son gave me a check for $18,000 with a note saying, retirement fund. My son Tyler had just sold my house for $1.5 million. While I was unconscious from surgery, he forged my signature, lied to realtors about my mental condition, and pocketed the difference. Then he walked into my hospital room, dropped that check on my bedside table, and said those words with a straight face, like he was doing me a favor, like stealing from your father while he's helpless makes you a hero instead of a thief. But here's what Tyler didn't know about his confused old man. I wasn't confused. I'd been testing him for 8 months, pretending to have memory problems just to see what kind of person my son really was. And I wasn't just any old man. I was a retired judge who still practiced law, with 28 years of experience recognizing criminal behavior. Tyler thought he was stealing from a helpless victim. He'd actually just committed multiple felonies against someone who knew exactly how to prosecute him. The hardest cases to try are always the ones involving family. But some lessons can only be taught in a courtroom. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story, so hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Family stories like this one seem to happen everywhere. Here's how a son's greed led to the most expensive legal education of his life. For 8 months, I'd been playing a role, testing Tyler, seeing if my only child would care for me when I seemed vulnerable, or if he'd see dollar signs instead. The test started after I found my late wife Martha's diary. She'd written about her concerns, how Tyler only visited when he needed money, how he'd grown embarrassed by our modest lifestyle, how he'd started telling his friends I was getting confused when I was sharper than ever. So I decided to find out who my son really was. I began forgetting small things, misplacing my reading glasses, acting confused about modern technology. Tyler's response told me everything I needed to know. "Dad, you left $800 on the kitchen counter," he said during one visit in March. I hadn't left anything. I'd placed that money there deliberately, watching from the window as he pocketed it. "Did I? I don't remember," I said. "It's okay, Dad. I'll keep it safe for you." He never mentioned it again. By April, Tyler was openly discussing my legal affairs in front of me, assuming I wouldn't understand. He'd bring Jessica over, and they'd whisper about power of attorney documents, guardianship procedures, estate planning. "The old man doesn't track any of this anymore," I heard him tell her one evening. "It's like he's reverting to some earlier time period." Jessica nodded. "Maybe we should get him evaluated, officially." What they didn't know was that I still had my law license. I'd never officially retired from Anderson and Associates, the firm I'd helped build after leaving the bench. My partners thought I was taking extended medical leave. The Colorado Bar Association still had me listed as active status, but Tyler assumed my legal knowledge had evaporated with age. In May, he started bringing legal documents to the house, real ones mixed with fake ones, testing whether I'd noticed the difference. "Dad, can you sign this?" He'd slide papers across my kitchen table. "It's just some insurance stuff." I'd examine each document carefully, using my magnifying glass for show. The insurance papers were legitimate. The power of attorney hidden underneath was a clumsy forgery. Wrong format, missing required witnesses, improper notarization. "Looks fine," I'd say, signing only the insurance documents. Tyler would smile and collect all the papers, thinking he'd gotten my signature on everything. He hadn't. By July, Tyler was scheduling doctor visits for me, claiming I needed cognitive assessments. Dr. Peterson, my longtime physician, called me privately. "Ed, your son is pushing for dementia testing. He says you're showing significant decline." "What did you tell him?" "I told him you'd need to request those tests yourself." "But Ed, I have to ask, how are you feeling? Any confusion, memory issues?" "Sharp as ever, Robert, sharper than my son realizes." The escalation continued through August. Tyler began taking photos of my house, measuring rooms, researching property values. He thought I didn't notice him on real estate websites, calculating equity and mortgage payoffs. When September arrived, he started mentioning assisted living facilities and downsizing conversations. "Dad, this house is too much for you now. All these stairs, the maintenance. Wouldn't a nice apartment be easier?" "I've lived here for 15 years, Tyler." "I know, but circumstances change." We have to be practical. The word practical became his favorite. Practical to simplify my finances. Practical to get professional caregivers. Practical to make me more comfortable in a smaller space. What Tyler didn't realize was that every conversation, every document, every suggestion was being carefully documented. I'd been building a file, recording our meetings, photographing the forged papers, keeping detailed notes of his increasingly aggressive timeline. Martha had been right to worry. but she would have been proud of how thoroughly I was preparing to defend myself. The question wasn't whether Tyler would try to take advantage of me. The question was how far he'd go, and whether he'd incriminate himself completely in the process. I was about to find out. October 8th changed everything. That was the day my gallbladder surgery was scheduled. Routine procedure, outpatient recovery, home the same evening. But Tyler didn't need to know those details. "Dad, I'm worried about this brain surgery," he said, driving me to Presbyterian St. Joseph's that morning. I hadn't corrected his assumption about the procedure type. Let him think whatever gave him the courage to show his true character. "The doctors say it's necessary," I replied, watching his hands grip the steering wheel. "Have you thought about what happens if—" Tyler paused. "I mean, if there are complications?" "What kind of complications?" "Dad, you need to be realistic. At your age, any surgery carries risks. And with your memory issues—" There it was, the setup. "What are you suggesting, Tyler?" "I'm suggesting we should have contingency plans, legal protections, someone who can make decisions if you can't." I knew exactly what he was suggesting. The forged power of attorney he'd been working on for months, the guardianship petition I'd seen him researching online, the medical emergency that would justify selling assets quickly before I could recover enough to object. "I suppose you have ideas about who should handle such decisions?" "Well, I am your only child, and Jessica works in healthcare administration. We understand these situations." Jessica had never worked in healthcare. She was a marketing coordinator for a dental office, and not a very successful one based on the financial pressure Tyler had been under lately. Speaking of which, I'd done some investigating of my own. Tyler's startup, Cloud Sync Solutions, had burned through its Series A funding in 18 months. The company was hemorrhaging money, behind on rent, 3 months away from bankruptcy, according to the financial statements I'd obtained through my legal network. Tyler personally owed $127,000 in credit card debt. His mortgage was current, but barely. I'd seen the payment history when he left his laptop open during one visit. The Mercedes in my driveway was leased, not owned, and he was 2 payments behind. Most troubling was the $67,000 in gambling losses I'd discovered. Online poker, cryptocurrency trading, sports betting. Tyler was addicted to financial risk, constantly chasing losses with bigger bets. Jessica knew about the debts. Her text messages to Tyler, which I'd glimpsed when he left his phone charging in my kitchen, were increasingly desperate. "We can't keep borrowing from your dad," she'd written in August. "You need to handle this situation permanently." Situation meant me. Permanently meant my death or incapacitation. Now, sitting in the hospital pre-op area, Tyler was positioning himself as my caring protector while planning to liquidate my assets the moment I went under anesthesia. What Tyler didn't know was the true extent of those assets. The house was worth $1.5 million, yes, but my partnership in Anderson and Associates was valued at $4. $2 million according to our most recent appraisal. I owned the building that housed our law offices, another $1.8 million in commercial real estate. My investment portfolio had grown to $890,000 over the years. Tyler's financial research had been remarkably shallow. He'd focused on the obvious assets, the house, my visible bank accounts, my pension payments. He'd never discovered the business interests, the property holdings, the carefully structured wealth I'd accumulated over 3 decades of legal practice. If he'd asked, I would have helped him. The law firm needed capital injection, and Tyler had a business background. We could have structured a partnership, brought him into the practice, solved his debt problems while strengthening our family relationship. But Tyler had chosen deception over honesty, theft over trust. As the nurse called my name for prep, Tyler squeezed my shoulder. "Don't worry, Dad. I'll handle everything while you're recovering." "I'm sure you will." "The house stuff, the bills, any decisions that need to be made, you won't have to think about any of it." "House stuff?" "Well, you know. If something happens to you, we'll need to act quickly. Medical bills, ongoing care costs. Real estate can take months to sell normally, but in emergency situations—" There it was. Tyler had already researched expedited house sales. He was planning to list the property before I was even discharged. "I see. It's just being prepared, Dad, just in case." The nurse returned with my gurney. As they wheeled me toward the surgical suite, I saw Tyler pull out his phone and start dialing. 3 hours later, while I was still groggy from anesthesia, Tyler had contacted Melissa Rodriguez at Century 21 Premier. He'd claimed medical emergency, family crisis, immediate liquidity needs. By the time I was discharged that evening, my house was unofficially listed for sale. Tyler thought he was executing the perfect plan. What he'd actually done was commit multiple felonies while I was completely alert and documenting everything. The real surgery was about to begin. Recovery from gallbladder surgery takes about a week. Tyler expected me to be bedridden and confused for much longer. I played the part. "Dad, how are you feeling?" he asked, visiting me the next morning with Jessica trailing behind. "Tired, confused. What happened yesterday?" "You had surgery, remember? Brain surgery. The doctors had to remove some tissue. I'd had no brain surgery. My cognitive function was perfect, but Tyler needed me mentally compromised to justify what came next." "I don't remember much," I said, settling deeper into my recliner. "That's normal, Dad. The anesthesia affects memory. You might be confused for a while." Jessica nodded sympathetically. "Uncle Ed, we're here to help with anything you need." She'd never called me Uncle Ed before. This new familiarity felt calculated, establishing herself as family while Tyler dismantled my autonomy. "Tyler," I said slowly, "did you say something yesterday about the house?" "The house?" "Before the surgery, something about selling it?" Tyler and Jessica exchanged glances. This was the moment they'd been preparing for. "Dad, we need to be practical about your situation now." "What situation?" "Your medical condition. The doctors said there might be ongoing cognitive issues, memory problems, decision-making difficulties." "Did they?" "Yes, Dad. And this house, it's too much for you. 3 bedrooms, 2 stories, all that maintenance. You need somewhere simpler." I studied Tyler's face. At 35, he looked older than his years. Stress lines around his eyes. His shirt was expensive but wrinkled. His watch was impressive but probably leveraged. "Where would I live?" "There are excellent facilities for people in your condition. Assisted living communities with full medical support." "Facilities? Or we could find you a nice apartment, something manageable." "And what happens to this house?" Tyler had rehearsed this answer. "We'd need to sell it to pay for your care. Medical expenses are incredibly high, Dad. Even with insurance, ongoing treatment costs." "How much would we get for the house?" "Well, the market's tough right now. We'd probably need to price it competitively for a quick sale." I knew the real market value. Recent comparables in my neighborhood had sold for $1.45 to $1.6 million. My house, with its updated kitchen and finished basement, should easily bring $1.5 million in normal circumstances. How competitively? Maybe $1.3 million. That would give us enough to set up your care and handle the medical bills. Tyler was planning to pocket $200,000 right from the start, before realtor fees, closing costs, and the mysterious medical bills he'd invented. "Have you already contacted someone about selling?" Another glance between Tyler and Jessica. "I made some preliminary inquiries," Tyler said, "just to understand our options." "What did you learn?" "There's a realtor who specializes in emergency situations. Melissa Rodriguez. She can move quickly when families need immediate liquidity." Melissa Rodriguez was known in legal circles. She'd been investigated twice for predatory practices targeting elderly sellers. Tyler had found exactly the wrong person to legitimize his fraud. "Show me the paperwork." "What paperwork?" "For the sale, for my care, for these medical bills you mentioned." Tyler fumbled in his jacket. "Dad, you're not thinking clearly right now. The surgery affected your judgment. We should wait until you're feeling better to review complex documents." "I'm feeling clear enough. Show me what you want me to sign." He produced a folder containing 3 documents. I recognized 2 of them immediately: the forged power of attorney from months earlier and a hastily drafted medical care authorization that would give Tyler control over my health care decisions. The 3rd document was new: a listing agreement with Melissa Rodriguez dated October 9th, the day after my surgery. "Tyler, this listing agreement is already signed." "No, Dad, that's just a draft. It's dated yesterday. It has signatures. Those are just preliminary signatures. Nothing's official until you approve it." I examined the document more carefully. Tyler's signature was there as authorized family representative. My signature was there too, a clear forgery based on my handwriting from the insurance documents he'd watched me sign months earlier. "This isn't my signature?" "Dad, you signed it yesterday morning before the surgery. You don't remember because of the medication." "I was unconscious yesterday morning." "No, Dad, you signed it earlier, when we discussed the house situation." Tyler was digging himself deeper with each lie. Every false statement was being recorded by the small device in my shirt pocket. A digital recorder I'd been using to document our conversations since September. And you filed this with the realtor? Just as a precaution. Nothing happens without your final approval. What kind of final approval? Jessica spoke up. Uncle Ed, Tyler has power of attorney now because of your condition. He can handle these decisions when you're not able to. Show me that power of attorney. Tyler hesitated. It's with my lawyer. Which lawyer? David Kumar at Morrison & Associates. I knew Morrison & Associates. David Kumar had been disbarred 6 months ago for exactly this kind of document fraud. Tyler had either chosen another corrupt lawyer or was lying about legal representation entirely. I'd like to speak with Mr. Kumar. Dad, you're exhausting yourself with all these questions. The doctors said you need rest. Which doctors? Dr. Peterson, the surgical team. They all said you'd have difficulty processing complex information for a while. Dr. Peterson had said no such thing. Gallbladder surgery doesn't affect cognitive function. Tyler was creating a fictional medical narrative to justify his financial control. Tyler, I want to see the medical records. What medical records? The ones documenting my cognitive impairment. Dad, you're getting agitated. This is exactly what the doctors warned us about. I'm not agitated. I'm asking for documentation. Jessica, maybe we should let him rest. They were preparing to leave, taking their forged documents with them. Time for the first test of my real position. Tyler, before you go, I want you to know I remember everything. Remember what? The $800, the forged power of attorney, the lies about brain surgery. Tyler's face went pale. Dad, you're confused. I'm a retired judge, son. I know fraud when I see it. You're not thinking clearly, clear enough to file charges. Tyler and Jessica left quickly after that, but not before I'd photographed every document and recorded every lie. The legal case was building beautifully. The next morning brought 3 phone calls that Tyler didn't expect me to understand. The first was from Margaret Foster, managing partner at Anderson & Associates. Ed, how was the surgery? Are you ready to come back to work? I spoke quietly, aware that Tyler might return at any time. Recovery's going well, Margaret, but I may need to handle some family legal issues before I return full-time. Family issues? Elder fraud? Document forgery? Possibly criminal charges? Margaret's tone sharpened. She'd handled hundreds of similar cases during our partnership. Do you need firm resources? I might. Can you have someone pull the Morrison & Associates file? David Kumar specifically. Kumar was disbarred last spring. Is someone claiming he's representing them? Someone is claiming exactly that. Ed, that's a serious allegation. Using a disbarred attorney's name for legitimacy is a felony. I'm aware. I'm also documenting everything. Good. Call me when you're ready to move forward officially. The second call came from Dr. Peterson. Ed, your son contacted me again about cognitive testing. He's quite insistent that you're showing signs of dementia. What exactly did he tell you? He claims you're having difficulty with basic decisions, forgetting conversations, signing documents without understanding them. He wants me to declare you mentally incompetent. Based on what evidence? That's what I told him. I explained that competency determinations require extensive evaluation, multiple specialists, documented cognitive decline over time. He seemed frustrated by the process. I imagine he was. Ed, I have to ask directly. Are you experiencing any confusion, memory loss, or decision-making difficulties? None whatsoever. In fact, I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. That's what I suspected. Your surgical recovery has been textbook normal. There's no medical basis for any cognitive concerns. Will you document that? Absolutely. And Ed, if you need medical records to counter any false claims, I'll provide them immediately. The third call was the most interesting. Rebecca Wilson, Chief Judge of Denver Family Court. Ed, I heard you had surgery. How are you feeling? Much better, Rebecca, though I may have a case for you soon. Oh? Guardianship fraud? An adult child trying to have me declared incompetent based on forged medical documentation. Rebecca had been my colleague for 20 years. She'd seen dozens of similar cases, family members exploiting elderly relatives through false incompetency claims. How advanced is the situation? He's already forged power of attorney documents and initiated property sales without authorization. I expect a guardianship petition within days. Do you have legal representation? I'm representing myself, though I may need to recuse from certain aspects if this goes criminal. Ed, be careful. Family cases can get emotionally complicated, even when you have clear legal grounds. This isn't emotional anymore, Rebecca. It's criminal. Keep me informed. If he files in my court, I'll make sure everything is handled properly. After the calls, I walked through my house, really looked at it for the first time in months. Tyler was right about one thing. It was too large for a single person. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, finished basement, 2-car garage. Martha and I had planned to fill it with grandchildren who never came. But size wasn't the issue. The issue was choice. Tyler had decided I was incapable of making my own housing decisions. He'd decided I needed care that I didn't want. He'd decided my assets were his to manage. Most importantly, he'd decided that love could be expressed through theft. I spent the afternoon organizing my evidence files. Financial records showing Tyler's debts, photographs of the forged documents, recordings of his lies about my medical condition, Dr. Peterson's notes confirming my mental competency. But the strongest evidence was still coming. Around 4 p.m. I heard voices in my driveway. Tyler had returned with 2 people I didn't recognize, a woman with a real estate folder and a man carrying legal documents, Melissa Rodriguez and someone claiming to be from Morrison and Associates. They thought they were meeting with a confused old man who could be pressured into signing anything. They were about to meet a retired judge who'd spent 28 years recognizing criminal behavior. I activated my recording device and prepared for the most incriminating conversation yet. The doorbell rang. Time to let Tyler dig his grave deeper. Tyler arrived with his accomplices at exactly 4:30 p.m. Military precision for a civilian crime. Dad, I brought some people to help us with the house situation. Melissa Rodriguez looked exactly like her photo on the real estate website. Mid-40s, expensive suit, predatory smile. The man with her was younger, nervous, carrying a briefcase with Morrison and Associates embossed on the leather. This is Melissa Rodriguez from Century 21, and this is James Miller from my lawyer's office. James Miller, not David Kumar, the disbarred attorney Tyler had mentioned yesterday. A different person entirely, which meant Tyler was improvising his legal fraud in real time. Mr. Anderson, Melissa said, Tyler tells me you're ready to make some practical decisions about your living situation. What kind of decisions? Well, given your recent medical challenges, it makes sense to simplify your financial picture. Liquidate some assets, reduce complexity, focus on your health. I noticed she didn't mention my cognitive impairment directly. Melissa was experienced enough to avoid explicit acknowledgement of mental incompetency. That could create legal liability if she was wrong. Tyler, what medical challenges did you tell Miss Rodriguez about? Dad, we discussed this yesterday. The surgery, the recovery period, the doctor's concerns. Which doctors? James Miller opened his briefcase. Mr. Anderson, I have some documents here that will help streamline this process. What kind of documents? Power of attorney confirmations, property transfer authorizations, medical care directives. Everything Tyler needs to handle your affairs during your recovery. I examined James Miller more carefully. His suit was cheap, his briefcase was old. His business cards were printed on standard office paper, not professional stock. Mr. Miller, how long have you worked with Morrison and Associates? About 6 months. And David Kumar is still the managing partner there? Yes, that's correct. Kumar had been disbarred 8 months ago. Miller was either incompetent or complicit in Tyler's fraud. Miss Rodriguez, what's the timeline for selling my house? Given the market conditions and your family's needs, I'd recommend listing immediately at $1.32 million. That price point should generate quick offers, probably within a week. $1.32 million was $180,000 below fair market value. For a quick sale, she was recommending a massive discount that would primarily benefit whoever collected the commission on an overpriced transaction. Why $1.32 million specifically? Market analysis shows that's the sweet spot for immediate liquidity. Show me that analysis. Melissa fumbled through her folder. I have comparable sales data here somewhere. Never mind the data. Tell me about your experience with emergency sales. I've helped many families navigate difficult medical situations. How many families? Dozens over the years. How many resulted in criminal investigations? The room went quiet. Melissa's smile faltered. I'm sorry? Criminal investigations, elder fraud charges, predatory sales practices. Tyler stepped forward. Dad, you're getting confused again. These people are here to help us. Help us with what, exactly? Managing your care, handling the financial pressures, making sure you're comfortable. Tyler, I want you to understand something clearly. I stood up from my chair, walked to my desk, and pulled out a file folder. I've been recording our conversations for 2 months. Tyler's face went white. Recording? Every conversation about my house, every lie about my medical condition, every forged document you've shown me. Dad, you're not thinking straight. I'm thinking like a judge, Tyler, which is what I am. Melissa Rodriguez was already backing toward the door. Maybe we should reschedule this meeting. Miss Rodriguez, before you leave, I want you to know that emergency sales to incapacitated elderly sellers are specifically addressed in Colorado. Revised Statute Section 18-6.5-103. I don't understand. Elder fraud, Class 3 felony, maximum sentence of 12 years in prison. She left quickly. James Miller was gathering his fake documents. Mr. Anderson, there seems to be some confusion here. The only confusion is why you're impersonating a legal representative. Morrison and Associates has been closed since David Kumar's disbarment. Are you a licensed attorney, Mr. Miller? I think there's been a misunderstanding. The misunderstanding is yours. You just participated in document fraud against an officer of the court. Miller fled even faster than Rodriguez. Tyler remained, standing in my living room like a defendant awaiting sentencing. Dad, I was trying to help you. Help me with what? Your situation. The house is too much for you. You need simpler living arrangements. Tyler, sit down. He sat. I want you to explain something to me. Why did you forge a power of attorney? I didn't forge anything. The document you showed me yesterday contains my signature on a document I never saw, dated a day when I was unconscious. That's forgery. Dad, you're confused about the timeline. I'm confused about your motivation. You earn $140,000 a year from your consulting business. Why do you need to steal my house? Tyler's confidence cracked. That's not what this is. Your startup failed. You owe $127,000 in credit card debt. You've lost $67,000 gambling online. You're 3 months from bankruptcy. How do you know that? I'm a judge, Tyler. I know how to investigate financial records. You're a retired judge. Check your facts. I pulled out my Colorado Bar Association membership card, current through December 2024. Then my business cards from Anderson and Associates, showing my active partnership status. You thought I was a confused old man living on a pension. You assumed I had no income beyond Social Security. You believed my only asset was this house. What are you saying? I'm saying you committed fraud against someone with the resources to prosecute you fully. Tyler was sweating now. Dad, we can work this out. We could have worked it out 2 months ago. You could have told me about your financial problems, asked for help, discussed solutions. You wouldn't have understood. I wouldn't have understood a business plan, a debt consolidation strategy, a partnership opportunity. What partnership opportunity? Anderson and Associates needs capital investment. The law firm is worth $4.2 million. Your business background could have been valuable. Tyler stared at me. The law firm is worth what? $4.2 million. I own 40%. The partnership could have solved your debt problems and given you a legitimate career in legal consulting. You're saying you could have helped me? I'm saying I would have helped you, if you'd been honest. Dad, I didn't know. You never told me about the law firm. You never asked. You assumed I was poor and confused. You planned to steal from me instead of talking to me. Tyler put his head in his hands. What happens now? Now you face the consequences of choosing theft over trust. Are you going to file charges? Tyler, you committed document fraud, elder abuse, and attempted grand theft. You involved accomplices and created false medical claims. This isn't a family dispute anymore. Dad, please. You had me declared mentally incompetent to medical professionals. You told people I had brain surgery when I had gallbladder surgery. You forged legal documents and initiated property sales without authorization. I can fix this. You can't fix felonies, Tyler. I walked to my phone and dialed a number Tyler recognized. Rebecca Wilson's direct line at the courthouse. Rebecca, it's Ed Anderson. I need to file some paperwork. Tyler was already calling Jessica, probably planning their next move. But there were no more moves available. The game was over. The guardianship hearing was scheduled for November 12th at 9 a.m. in Courtroom 4D, Denver Family Court. Tyler had filed the petition 3 days after our confrontation, claiming I was mentally incompetent and required immediate protective supervision. His attorney was Kenneth Walsh from Palmer and Associates, a legitimate firm that apparently didn't investigate their clients' backgrounds very thoroughly. The petition alleged that I suffered from severe cognitive decline following brain surgery exhibited inability to manage financial affairs, and posed a danger to myself through poor decision-making. Tyler had learned from his mistakes with fake lawyers. This time, he'd hired real legal representation and filed authentic court documents. But authentic documents containing false information are still fraud. I arrived at the courthouse at 8:30 a.m., walking through the same security checkpoint I'd passed through thousands of times during my career. The guards recognized me but said nothing. They'd learned over the years that judges prefer anonymity when handling personal business. Courtroom 4D was my old courtroom. I'd presided over family law cases there for 15 years before transitioning to the law firm. The bench still had the small scratch on the left side where I'd accidentally dropped my gavel in 2018. Tyler was already seated at the petitioner's table with Kenneth Walsh. Jessica sat in the gallery behind them, along with 3 people I didn't recognize. Probably character witnesses Tyler had recruited to testify about my declining condition. At the respondent's table sat Margaret Foster from my law firm, representing me in her capacity as my legal counsel. This was important for appearances. I couldn't represent myself without appearing to validate Tyler's competency concerns. Judge Rebecca Wilson entered at exactly 9 a.m. She looked at me, looked at Tyler, and looked at the case file with what I recognized as judicial skepticism. This is case number 2024 PR 7849, Anderson v. Anderson, petition for emergency guardianship. Mr. Walsh, you may proceed. Kenneth Walsh stood up. Your Honor, this is a tragic situation involving an elderly gentleman whose cognitive abilities have been severely compromised by recent medical trauma. He gestured toward me. Edward Anderson, age 64, underwent emergency brain surgery on October 8th. Since that time, he has exhibited significant memory loss, impaired judgment, and inability to manage his financial affairs safely. Walsh continued for 10 minutes, describing a fictional version of me that bore no resemblance to reality. According to his presentation, I was confused, paranoid, unable to recognize family members, and prone to making irrational financial decisions. The petitioner, Mr. Tyler Anderson, is the respondent's only child and seeks emergency guardianship to protect his father from further financial and personal harm. Judge Wilson looked at me throughout Walsh's presentation. I sat calmly, taking notes, occasionally conferring with Margaret Foster, displaying exactly the kind of competent legal behavior that contradicted everything Walsh was claiming. Mr. Walsh, I notice this petition alleges brain surgery. Do you have medical records supporting that claim? Yes, Your Honor. Walsh handed over a folder. Documentation from Presbyterian St. Joseph Hospital regarding the respondent's surgical procedure and subsequent cognitive impairment. Judge Wilson reviewed the documents for several minutes. Her expression grew increasingly skeptical. Mr. Walsh, these medical records indicate gallbladder surgery, not brain surgery. Your Honor, I believe there may be some confusion in the medical documentation. The confusion appears to be in your petition. The surgical notes clearly state laparoscopic cholecystectomy, gallbladder removal. There's no indication of any neurological procedure. Tyler whispered urgently to his attorney. Walsh looked uncomfortable. Your Honor, regardless of the specific surgical procedure, the respondent has clearly exhibited cognitive decline since his hospitalization. Based on what evidence? Witness testimony from family members who have observed his declining condition firsthand. I see. And who are these witnesses? Walsh called Tyler to testify first. Mr. Anderson, please describe your father's condition since his surgery. Tyler had prepared for this moment. Your Honor, my father has been increasingly confused and forgetful. He can't remember conversations we've had. He signs documents without understanding them. He's becoming paranoid and suspicious of people trying to help him. Can you give specific examples? He accused me of forging documents when I was trying to help him organize his affairs. He claimed I was stealing money from him. He even said he was going to file criminal charges against me for helping with his care. And what documents were you helping him organize? Power of attorney paperwork so I could handle his bills and medical decisions while he recovers. Judge Wilson looked at me again. Mr. Edward Anderson, do you understand the nature of these proceedings? I stood up. Yes, Your Honor. My son is petitioning the court to declare me mentally incompetent so he can gain control of my assets. And how do you respond to his allegations about your cognitive condition? I respond by noting that I'm a retired judge who maintains active status with the Colorado Bar Association and currently serves as senior partner at Anderson and Associates law firm. The courtroom went silent. Tyler's face turned pale. Kenneth Walsh looked confused. Jessica stared at me in shock. Judge Wilson consulted her notes. Mr. Anderson, are you saying you're currently a practicing attorney? That's correct, Your Honor. I retired from the bench in 2018 but have maintained my law practice. I'm licensed, insured, and handling active cases. She looked at Tyler. Mr. Tyler Anderson, were you aware that your father is a practicing attorney? Your Honor, my father has been very confused about his professional status. He sometimes thinks he's still working when he's actually retired. Judge Wilson raised an eyebrow. Miss Foster, can you clarify your client's current professional status? Margaret Foster stood. Your Honor, I can confirm that Edward Anderson is an active partner at Anderson & Associates. He's been on medical leave for his surgery but remains fully licensed and competent. In fact, he's been assisting with case preparation throughout his recovery period. And his cognitive condition? Completely normal, Your Honor. Mr. Anderson has shown no signs of impairment. His legal reasoning, memory, and judgment are all functioning at full capacity. Judge Wilson turned back to Tyler. Mr. Tyler Anderson, you've alleged that your father can't understand legal documents. Yet he's a practicing attorney who handles complex legal matters professionally. Tyler's attorney tried to intervene. Your Honor, many individuals with cognitive decline can appear functional in familiar settings while struggling with basic daily decisions. Mr. Walsh, do you have any medical evidence of cognitive decline? The family has observed behavioral changes since the surgery. I'm asking for medical evidence. Neurological testing, psychiatric evaluation, cognitive assessment by qualified professionals. Your Honor, the family felt that immediate intervention was necessary, given the severity of the observed decline. Judge Wilson's patience was wearing thin. Mr. Walsh, you filed an emergency guardianship petition alleging severe cognitive impairment, yet your client's father is a licensed attorney who appears fully competent to represent his own interests. Do you have any actual medical evidence supporting your claims? No, Your Honor, but no further questions for this witness. Tyler returned to his seat, visibly shaken. Your Honor, I said, I'd like to present some evidence regarding this petition. Proceed, Mr. Anderson. This guardianship petition is based on false medical claims and fraudulent documentation. My son has forged power of attorney documents, lied about my medical condition, and attempted to sell my property without authorization. I handed Margaret Foster a folder, which she passed to the court. These are recordings of conversations with my son over the past 2 months, documenting his systematic deception about my mental capacity. Also included are the forged documents he created and medical records proving my cognitive competency. Judge Wilson reviewed the materials. Mr. Anderson, are you alleging that your son has committed fraud? Yes, Your Honor. Document fraud, elder abuse, and attempted grand theft. I'm requesting that this court dismiss the guardianship petition and refer this matter to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Tyler jumped up. Your Honor, my father is being paranoid and vindictive. I was trying to help him. Sit down, Mr. Tyler Anderson. Judge Wilson's voice carried the authority I remembered from her years as a prosecutor before joining the bench. Mr. Walsh, your client has filed a petition containing false medical information. The alleged brain surgery never occurred. The claimed cognitive impairment has no medical documentation. Your petition appears to be based entirely on fabricated evidence. Your Honor, I was provided with information by my client. I relied on his representations about his father's condition. Did you independently verify any of those representations? No, Your Honor. Did you obtain medical records before filing emergency guardianship papers? My client indicated that medical records were forthcoming. Mr. Walsh, you've been practicing family law for how long? 12 years, Your Honor. In 12 years, have you ever filed an emergency guardianship petition without medical documentation? This was presented as an urgent situation requiring immediate intervention. Judge Wilson looked at Tyler with the expression she reserved for defendants who had perjured themselves. Mr. Tyler Anderson, stand up. Tyler stood. You've sworn under oath that your father suffers from cognitive impairment following brain surgery. The medical records show he had gallbladder surgery and no cognitive issues. You've claimed he can't understand legal documents when he's a practicing attorney. You've alleged he needs protection when he's clearly capable of protecting himself. Your Honor, I genuinely believed my father was having problems. Based on what? His behavior had changed. He seemed confused about things. What things? Financial matters, legal documents, basic decisions. I stood up. Your Honor, I'd like to address that claim. Go ahead, Mr. Anderson. I was testing my son's character by pretending to be confused. I wanted to see if he would take advantage of perceived vulnerability or show genuine care for my welfare. And what did you discover? I discovered that my son chose theft over honesty. He forged documents, lied to professionals, and attempted to steal my house while I was recovering from surgery. Judge Wilson looked at Tyler again. Is this true? Tyler was trapped. Admitting the truth meant confessing to fraud. Maintaining his lies meant perjury in open court. Your Honor, the situation is complicated. It's not complicated, Mr. Tyler Anderson. Either you committed fraud or you didn't. Either you forged documents or you didn't. Either you lied about your father's medical condition or you didn't. Tyler said nothing. This petition is dismissed with prejudice. Mr. Tyler Anderson, you and your attorney will remain after court to discuss criminal referral procedures with the bailiff. She looked at me one final time. Mr. Edward Anderson, you're obviously competent to manage your own affairs. I'm sorry this proceeding was necessary. As Judge Wilson left the bench, Tyler finally understood what had happened. His confused father had just dismantled his entire criminal scheme in the courtroom where that father had presided for 15 years. The student had tried to con the teacher. The lesson was about to get much more expensive. The criminal referral moved quickly. District Attorney Patricia Morris had prosecuted elder fraud cases for 8 years and recognized the pattern immediately. Tyler was arrested on November 15th at his office in downtown Denver. The charges were comprehensive: document forgery, elder abuse, attempted grand theft, mail fraud, and filing false court documents. Mr. Anderson, Detective Sarah Martinez called me that afternoon. We need you to come in for a formal statement. Of course. What's the timeline for prosecution? DA Morris wants to move fast. This case has multiple felonies with clear documentation. Your recordings and evidence files are excellent. What about accomplices? We're investigating Melissa Rodriguez for elder fraud conspiracy. James Miller is cooperating. Turns out he's not a lawyer at all, just someone Tyler hired to impersonate legal counsel. I drove to the Denver Police Department that evening. The irony wasn't lost on me. After 28 years of sending defendants to this same building, I was finally entering as a victim. Detective Martinez was thorough. Mr. Anderson, walk me through the timeline of your son's deception. For 2 hours, I detailed Tyler's systematic fraud, the fake Alzheimer's symptoms I'd performed to test his character, his escalating attempts to control my finances, the forged documents, false medical claims, and criminal conspirators he'd recruited. Why did you let it go so far? Martinez asked. You could have stopped this after the first forged document. I wanted to see how far he'd go, and I wanted to build a case that would prevent him from victimizing other elderly people. Other elderly people? Detective, Tyler didn't develop this scheme overnight. The sophistication of his approach, his knowledge of guardianship procedures, his network of corrupt realtors, this wasn't his first attempt. Martinez pulled out another file. Actually, we're investigating similar complaints against Melissa Rodriguez involving 3 other families. Your son may have been her accomplice in multiple elder fraud cases. The scope of Tyler's criminality was becoming clear. This wasn't desperate debt relief. It was systematic predation against vulnerable seniors. What's the penalty exposure? Colorado elder abuse statute carries up to 12 years. Document forgery is up to 6 years per count. Mail fraud is federal, up to 20 years. If we can prove pattern activity across multiple victims, we're looking at RICO charges. Tyler's $385,000 debt problem had become a potential life sentence. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for December 3rd. Tyler made bail, $100,000, which Jessica apparently paid using their emergency credit card. Their marriage was already disintegrating under the financial and legal pressure. Kenneth Walsh had withdrawn as Tyler's attorney after learning about the forged documents. Tyler's new lawyer was James Crawford, a public defender with more experience in criminal cases and less tolerance for client lies. I arrived at the courthouse early, walking through the same halls where I'd spent 3 decades of my career. Several former colleagues nodded respectfully. Word had spread through the legal community about Tyler's case. Judge Michael Torres presided over the preliminary hearing. He'd been a prosecutor when I was on the bench, and we'd worked together on numerous cases involving family exploitation. This is People v. Tyler Anderson, case number 2024, CR 4921. Mr. Crawford, how does your client plead to the charges? Not guilty, Your Honor. Torres reviewed the case file. Mr. Crawford, I'm looking at allegations of systematic elder fraud against the defendant's father, who is a retired judge and current member of the Colorado Bar Association. Yes, Your Honor. The defendant allegedly forged power of attorney documents, made false medical claims, and attempted to sell his father's property without authorization. Your Honor, my client maintains that he was acting in what he believed were his father's best interests. Mr. Crawford, good intentions don't excuse document forgery. Adia Jennifer Walsh, no relation to Tyler's former attorney, presented the prosecution's case. Your Honor, this defendant engaged in a systematic scheme to defraud his elderly father through false medical claims and forged legal documents. The victim, despite being portrayed as cognitively impaired, is actually a practicing attorney who recorded evidence of his son's crimes over a 2-month period. She played excerpts from my recordings. Tyler's voice, clearly documented, lying about my medical condition, discussing property sales without authorization, and recruiting accomplices for document fraud. Furthermore, Your Honor, we have evidence that this defendant was part of a larger elder fraud operation targeting multiple victims throughout the Denver metro area. Torres looked at Tyler. Mr. Anderson, do you understand the seriousness of these charges? Yes, Your Honor. Elder abuse is a serious felony in Colorado. Document forgery carries significant penalties. You're alleged to have committed these crimes against your own father who trusted you with his care. Tyler's voice was barely audible. I understand, Your Honor. Bail is continued at $100,000. Trial is set for February 15th. Mr. Anderson, you're prohibited from contacting the victim or any witnesses in this case. As we left the courthouse, Tyler approached me in the hallway. Dad, can we talk? Tyler, you're violating your bail conditions by contacting me. I just want to explain. You've had 8 months to explain. You chose fraud instead. I was desperate. The debts, the pressure, Jessica threatening to leave. You were never desperate enough to ask for help honestly. Would you have helped me? Tyler, I offered you a partnership in my law firm worth millions of dollars. You responded by trying to steal my house. I didn't know about the law firm. You didn't ask about the law firm. You assumed I was poor and helpless. Tyler's lawyer pulled him away before he could incriminate himself further. That evening, Margaret Foster called me at home. Ed, the DA wants to offer Tyler a plea bargain. What kind of bargain? 2 years in prison, 5 years probation, full restitution, and cooperation in the Melissa Rodriguez investigation. What do you think I should do? That's entirely your decision. But Ed, he's your son. He's also a criminal who exploited my trust and endangered other elderly victims. Think about it. The offer expires in 30 days. I spent that night thinking about Martha's diary, about Tyler's childhood, about the moment I realized my only child saw me as a mark instead of a father. Justice demanded consequences. Love demanded something more complicated. The decision would define the rest of our relationship. Tyler accepted the plea bargain on December 28th. 2 years in state prison. 5 years probation. Complete restitution of $180,000 for the house under valuation, plus $45,000 in legal fees and court costs. Cooperation with federal investigators pursuing the Rodriguez elder fraud network. The sentencing hearing was January 15th, 2025. Tyler wore the same suit he'd worn to my fake guardianship hearing, but it hung differently on him now. Stress had cost him 20 pounds and most of his confidence. Your Honor, Tyler said, reading from a prepared statement, I want to apologize to my father and to the court for my actions. I betrayed the trust of someone who loved me, and I exploited systems designed to protect vulnerable people. Judge Torres listened without expression. Mr. Anderson, you've pleaded guilty to elder abuse against your own father. What do you want the court to understand about your actions? Your Honor, I was facing financial ruin and made terrible decisions under pressure. But that doesn't excuse what I did. I turned my father's love against him, and I used his trust to commit crimes. What have you learned from this experience? I learned that there are no shortcuts to solving problems. I should have asked for help instead of trying to take what wasn't mine. Torres turned to me. Mr. Edward Anderson, do you wish to make a victim impact statement? I stood up. Yes, Your Honor. The most painful part of this experience wasn't the financial fraud. It was realizing that my son saw me as an obstacle instead of a person. Tyler didn't just steal money. He stole my dignity, my autonomy, and my trust in family relationships. I looked at Tyler. But I also learned something about myself. I learned that I was willing to risk my safety to test whether my son truly cared about me.
That need for validation made me vulnerable to the very exploitation I was trying to uncover. What do you want the court to consider in sentencing? Tyler committed serious crimes that endangered other elderly people. But he's also my son, and he's shown genuine remorse. I support the plea agreement because it holds him accountable while giving him a chance to rebuild his life honestly.
Torres sentenced Tyler to exactly the terms of the plea agreement. No surprises, no mercy, no vindictiveness. Just consequences proportional to the crimes. After sentencing, Jessica approached me in the courthouse hallway. "Mr. Anderson, I want you to know I'm filing for divorce." "I'm sorry to hear that." "No, you're not. You never liked me." "Jessica, I never had the chance to like or dislike you. You and Tyler kept me at arm's length for 3 years. We were protecting ourselves. From what? From judgment, from disappointment, from having to live up to your success. For the first time, I understood part of Tyler's motivation. He'd been intimidated by my career, my reputation, my financial stability. Instead of seeing those things as resources he could access, he'd seen them as standards he couldn't meet. Jessica, Tyler could have asked for help at any time. He was too proud. Pride doesn't justify fraud. I know. But maybe if you'd been more approachable, he wouldn't have felt so desperate. She left before I could respond, but her words stayed with me. The financial aftermath was manageable. Tyler's crimes had cost me about $225,000 in legal fees, lost house value, and related expenses. The plea agreement guaranteed full restitution, though it would take years to collect. More importantly, the Rodriguez investigation led to charges against 12 people in a systematic elder fraud network. My case had exposed a criminal enterprise that had stolen over $3.2 million from elderly victims across Colorado. 3 months after Tyler's sentencing, I received a letter from him at Sterling Correctional Facility. "Dad, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I'm using my time here to get financial counseling and addiction treatment. I never told you about the gambling problem because I was ashamed. I never told you about the business failures because I thought you'd be disappointed. I never asked for help because I thought it would prove I was a failure as a son. I realize now that keeping secrets from you was the real failure. You would have helped me if I'd been honest. You would have understood my problems if I'd trusted you with them. Instead, I chose to see you as an enemy instead of an ally. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to want a relationship with me after what I did. But I want you to know that I understand now what I threw away. Not just the money or the house. I threw away the chance to have a father who respected me. I'm going to spend the rest of my sentence learning how to be someone worthy of that respect again. Not because I expect anything from you, but because I owe it to both of us to become better than the person who hurt you. I love you, Dad. I'm sorry it took prison for me to remember how to say that honestly." I read the letter 3 times before deciding what to do with it. Then I wrote back. Tyler was released after 18 months for good behavior. I was waiting in the parking lot at Sterling Correctional Facility on a cold morning in July 2026. He looked older, thinner, but somehow more substantial than the desperate man who'd tried to steal my house. Prison had stripped away the pretense and forced him to confront who he'd become. "Dad, I didn't expect you to come. I wasn't sure I would until this morning." We drove in silence for 20 minutes before Tyler spoke again. "I have a job lined up. Construction work with a company that hires ex-felons. It pays $18 an hour. That's a start. I know it's not much compared to what I used to make." "Tyler, honest money is worth more than stolen money, regardless of the amount." He nodded. "I learned that. I also learned that I spent years resenting you for achievements I never tried to understand." "What do you mean?" "In prison, I met guys who'd never had fathers, never had someone who cared whether they succeeded or failed. I realized that having a successful father wasn't a burden. It was a gift I'd been too proud to accept." We stopped for lunch at a diner near Golden. Tyler ordered carefully, checking prices, calculating costs. The reckless spender was gone, replaced by someone who understood the value of money earned honestly. "Dad, I want to pay back every dollar I cost you. The restitution agreement already covers that. Not just the legal restitution. I want to pay back the disappointment, the broken trust, the pain I caused. How do you pay back broken trust? By earning it again, one honest day at a time." I'd been thinking about this conversation for 18 months. "Tyler, I'm establishing a foundation for elder abuse prevention. Would you be interested in helping?" "Helping how?" speaking to families about financial fraud warning signs, sharing your story to help other people avoid the mistakes you made. Tyler was quiet for a long time. You'd trust me to represent your foundation. I'd trust you to represent honesty. The foundation isn't about punishment, it's about prevention. Dad, why are you giving me this chance? Because you earned it. Not through 18 months in prison, but through 18 months of honest letters, genuine accountability, and real change. What if I let you down again? Then you'll face consequences again. But Tyler, the alternative to trusting you is writing you off completely. I'd rather risk disappointment than guarantee it. He cried then, for the first time since his arrest. Not from self-pity or fear, but from relief. We spent the rest of the drive home planning the Foundation's mission and Tyler's role in it. Sometimes the hardest justice to serve is mercy. But mercy earned through genuine change honors both victim and perpetrator. I'd gotten my son back. More importantly, Tyler had gotten himself back. If you've experienced family financial betrayal, let me know in the comments how you handled it. Sometimes the most painful lessons create the strongest foundations for rebuilding trust.